Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and today I'm reviewing The Few and Cursed, a game by Rock Manor Games based on the comic book series. This game takes place in a post-apocalyptic cowboy western wasteland in which water has become incredibly scarce and is ultimately being used as a form of currency in this game. This game, western, post-apocalyptic zombies and snakes and who knows what aside, all those other, little mix of genres going on aside, this game is an adventure-based sandboxy deck building game. A game in which you're going to start with your deck. You have your deck over here, you're going to draw 4 cards and proceed to carry out a turn. A turn is going to be drawing your 4 cards, then improvising from this deck of common cards, looking at those 2 cards, deciding what's a better fit for your deck. And you know what? I think I could use a little bit of an attack in my deck, discarding that other card, having an encounter where you are. So for instance, in my case, I am over here Maecenas, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have an encounter on a rune. So I'm going to draw one of these cards over here, look at the options given on it, and I will have an encounter at the runes. Let's read this verbatim. A shiver goes down your spine as you notice the quiet murmur of the wind. A demon bursts through the wall and comes right at you. It winds up to take a massive swipe with its claws. Spend 3 movement to roll underneath attack, or suffer a wound. So effectively, I have to either spend 3 movement or suffer a wound. In my case, I don't have a handful of 3 movement, so I will sadly suffer a wound, going down 1 health. That's the encounter phase of the turn. From there, I will go ahead and spend my cards, doing different things. So for instance, I'm going to go ahead and get 2 money from the common pool here. That's 2 money over there. Then I'm going to go ahead and take 2 attack over here. I'll build up the 2 attack, take 2 more money, and gain a curse, which is a negative characteristic, and then I'll get 2 more attack, and then possibly have an encounter. Throughout the game, the main phase of your turn is going to be spending your cards and then taking 1 action. Those actions vary. They could be collecting an artifact from one of those 4 corners of the board. They could be having an encounter again with the deck, the same way you did at the beginning of the turn. They could be having a fight or something like that, going after one of the wanted, either the standard wanted that are always available, or the specific wanted over here that are going to be a little harder to get, a little harder to beat, but at the same time come with greater rewards. And those wanted, if you go further enough down the deck, you'll eventually uncover these monsters that, well, those ones can have sometimes as much as 20 health. You'll have to have 20 attack in a single turn to take them out, which can be daunting. There are a few other things you can do as your main action for the turn. You could potentially rob another player if you are in the same space as them. You have to have enough attack, double their current health. They will go down a health, and you'll get both victory points and money for that attack. There are a few other things you can do throughout the turn. Some of them are going to be your main action of the turn. Some of them are going to be things like cashing in jobs. In the game, you're going to have the option to get these jobs, which will have certain requirements to fulfill that job. So for instance, perhaps you have to give up attack or movement. Perhaps you have to have your curse at a certain threshold. Perhaps you have to camp overnight at a location, which is one of the actions you can take to draw back up your deck and, heal 1 wound. At the same time, there's also going to be this equipment available at the common store in San Andreas. Whenever you start your turn in San Andreas, instead of having an encounter, you will instead be able to potentially either get new jobs or buy equipment. Equipment can be a lot of fun. They can do things like this one over here is every round I can give up 1 ammo to generate 2 attack. This one, I can simply get an attack every round. And this, on my harmonica, I can get 1 water every single round. These items over here, these things you're going to get, are going to go to your character. You have 2 hands and 2 accessory slots. And if you notice, they are vastly different size than your regular deck because they are not part of the deck building. They are additional things you will generate every single turn in addition to the cards you draw. You're going to go through that again and again, repeating the sequence of going back and forth, taking your turn, doing your things, generating something, until you eventually trigger endgame, which will come through a variety of ways. Either all the artifacts on the board are gone, or 3 of these 4 monsters have been defeated through the course of play, or alternatively, if any one monster slowly makes its way into San Andreas, well, then that is going to be the end of the game. Throughout the game, there are a variety of ways to score points. The biggest ones in this game are going to be the collection of artifacts, or building up a heavy attack deck in order to take out the monsters. Ultimately, this is a deck building experience with a few different pathways to victories, and a vast array of different things you can do on your turn to slowly build up your engine, to get to a point where you can take out the mighty snake with a 20 action attack in a single turn. There's a lot going on in the Few and the Cursed, or I always say the Few and the Cursed. In the Few and Cursed, there's a lot going on, a lot of different options. To begin with, this is deck building. If you like deck building, this is already a plus in the corner of this game. If you like the world of this game, that's also a pro, and specifically this world in the sense that it's from a comic book. If you're familiar with the intellectual property, then that's another pro in its favor. For myself, I'm not. I got into this because, you know, Rock Manor Games put out a game, it looks cool, and so I'm, you know, checking it out. I have no knowledge of the actual comic book itself, but I can tell you that the art in this game is absolutely stunning. From the board itself, which ranges from good to great, to the box, the cards, the characters, everything in this game, the art is absolutely beautiful, which is, I guess, no surprise given that it is based on a comic book. It does have, I don't know if the art matches the comic book, to be fair, but I guess I just assume it does. But either way, the art in this game is gorgeous. It is vibrant to the point that my wife, I'm playing this with my wife, she did not like many of the various creatures of the board because of how graphic the art conveyed what those creatures were, what those zombies were, what the various creatures in this game were. Additionally, the game is going to have a lot of variable gameplay choices in the way it delivers a fairly good sandboxy feel. Now, it's not going to compare to true sandbox experiences that give you a vast array of options. Ultimately, in order to win this game, your most likely two outcomes are going to have to be to focus on either artifact collection, which will give you these cards that go straight to your hand, become part of your deck, but also each artifact is going to give you a lot of endgame points. So you're going to primarily have to focus on either artifact collection or on building up enough of a power build that you can take out those monsters. There are many other things you can do to earn points, but those two are going to have to be the core of what you're doing. Along the way, you will do other things. You will collect money. You will finish off jobs that will be a decent source of points, and those jobs are a double-edged sword because those jobs are going to give you negative points for each one you don't complete at the end of the game. But if you do build up a good handful of jobs, you can potentially get a lot of points that way as well. So it's going to give you a very strong sandbox feel, although it is tempered by having two primary driving forces in the game. There are a lot of systems in this game that are very rewarding in the way they play out. From the curse system, which I particularly enjoy. The curse system is the idea that your characters have a curse threshold. And before the curse threshold, you can do certain cards. So for instance, this card over here is going to give you 2 attack, 2 attack, 2 money, and it's going to give you a curse. So it's a far more powerful card than what you can typically get. But it's going to give you a curse, and you have to keep your curse in check to continue to benefit from those cards. Because if you become cursed, if you do cross your threshold, then ultimately every single time you increase your curse from there, you'll take a wound. And there's not a lot of opportunities to get your health back. You have to be very on top of your health, or just ensure you're not taking damage that often. And so this curse system offers this reward and punishment goal to go for. Are you going to try to push your curse to get those benefits and then try to keep your threshold or your health in check? Or are you going to play it a little safer? Maybe you draft a few cards from this deck that slowly let you reward you, that slowly let you take out your curse every round. Because a few of these cards, for instance, Blessing, every time you draw a Blessing, you'll be able to reduce your curse. So you can play it safe or you can play it close to the edge. Both of them are fun in different ways. And if you ever do become cursed, you will flip your character card. In addition to the fact that further curse will then give you health. You'll lose health from each one. In addition to that, you'll be able to cash in more. You'll have a stronger character. Your ammo will be worth more attack as you cash your ammo in. And speaking of which, the ammo system is something else that I like. When you are tackling a monster that requires 20 attack to take out, sure, you can build a better deck than your starting hand, but you're still gonna have a hard time getting 20 attack from a handful of cards. Some of the artifacts will help, because some of these artifacts will have like 6 damage in a single card, which can help you get to 20. But something else you're going to want to keep an eye on is your ammo threshold. Throughout the game, you can build up ammo. You have an ammo pouch of how much ammo you can hold. As you build up ammunition, at any point you can cash in that ammunition to generate additional attack. When you're in San Andreas, you will have the option to pay money, both to get these item cards, which help, but also you have the ability to buy bullets themselves, increase your ammo pouch capacity, increase your curse threshold, letting you play more with that curse back and forth, and or even increase your health. But managing your ammo in this game is the key to being able to dish out 20 attack in one shot, getting the points there associated, and possibly stopping the endgame trigger. Additionally, the artifacts in this game are a ton of fun. I like the artifacts a lot. What you're going to have 12 different artifacts in the game. Depending on the player count, you may or may not have all of those in play at any given point, but each time you go to one of the artifact locations, you can look at the artifacts there and pick one, adding that card to your deck. And they are a lot of fun. Some of them will just generate points every time they cycle through your deck. Some of them are going to give you, like I said, 6 attack in a shot. Others are multi-purpose, giving you perhaps a little bit of everything, a little bit of attack, a little bit of money, and a little bit of movement. All of them are powerful in different ways, giving you both strong in-game benefits as well as end-game points at the end of the game. The artifacts are a lot of fun to pick up, and it can be one of those triggers that you run around the board trying to get those artifacts, which will trigger endgame, but will also have a fun engine going along with it as you go. This game is fairly simple, and yet not too simple. It's a deck builder at its core. So if you've ever played a deck building game, it's going to be already easier to teach players how to get up and running. It's already going to be easier to say, listen, you have a hand of cards, you play that hand of cards, and here's how you deck build. Rather than a row full of cards, or rather than a pool of cards like a Dominion or Ascension, any of those games, you instead just improvise, which is a fairly unique way of deck building. It is a little bit more limiting in the options on the table. At the same time, there are things you can do. There are different cards or abilities you can get. Perhaps you get one of the shop cards that will let you draw 3 cards at a turn and pick one, which gives you more flexibility. So it's a little different in what it's doing, which is both a pro and a con. It's a pro because it's different. It might be a con if you don't like drawing only 2 cards and having minimal choice. But the term is called improvise, which to me very much feels like what the game is going for. You are a cowboy in the West and you're trying to, at the spur of the moment, you have your hand of cards, you know what you're going to do. But now you have to improvise. Draw 2, pick 1, and then play out your turn. But now this card is also permanently in your deck. I like the feel of that deck building. It works for this game. And past that deck building, the rest is pretty simple. You say deck building, encounter, and then take one of these actions on the turn. That's all. Rinse, repeat until the game end is triggered. It is, like I said, fairly simple, and yet not overly simple. As far as things that I didn't like about the game, my biggest con for this game is going to be the game length. The game can run fairly long. There are 3 ways the game ends. Either all the artifacts are taken, or one of the monsters marches into San Andreas, or you take out 3 of the 4 monsters. Now, from those options, I have had the game end both from the artifacts, and I've had the game end from monsters entering San Andreas. I have never had the game actually end from killing 3 monsters because it just takes too long. What I have found consistently in every game we have played is by the time you're heading in that direction, by the time you see that you're going to be trying to win from killing 3 monsters, instead player or players will start running around the game, running around the board trying to collect the remaining artifacts. Because while the game is fun, it's a fun, solid 60 to 90 minute experience, and if you really try to go for the full killing 3 monsters, this can run 2 hours plus, which frankly, I don't know if it's worth that level of game time. And so it has consistently, every time we have played this game, it has either ended because a monster made its way into San Andreas, or other players just said, screw it, we're going to collect the artifacts because we've had fun, but it's time to wrap up and move on to something else. And so that is definitely something that's taken into account. The length of the game can be a little long, but again, keep in mind, I'm not saying it's overly long. I'm saying that we pushed some of the earlier endgame triggers rather than relying on taking out 3 monsters, which can drag out the game much longer than I would like. On the smaller side, the board size, meaning 2 of my smaller cons in terms of the game, the board itself is unnecessarily large, and it's nice, don't get me wrong, but it's large enough to the point that it doesn't fit properly into my main table. I have to rotate it the wrong direction, a little bit of a pain. I have a pretty big table space, since that's saying something. It's just a drop too large, and it's not that it's too large in and of itself. That I think I could deal with. Rather, it is larger than it needs to be. I think the board design could have been slightly compressed to deliver the same utility with a slightly smaller board. And kind of a pet peeve for me is that it gave you this size board and then didn't even give you spots for the artifact cards or the main deck of cards over here. The main deck of cards I'm kind of just putting onto the board because there is no official place for it. They have a lot of empty dead space on the board, a lot of spaces to put all the rest of the cards, the wanted cards, the job cards, the item cards, the encounter cards. And then the main deck of cards just isn't really there, which is frankly a little surprising to me. And so I wish the board were a drop smaller, small nitpicking, not a huge deal, but certainly something worth mentioning, at least for myself. And lastly, the encounter system in this deck. I wasn't a huge fan of the fact that the encounter system can add a lot of luck into the experience. Like you saw when I drew that encounter card, suddenly I have to spend an extra 3 movement or take 2 wounds, which is not fun. It's not great. And I'd be okay with that if we were more consistent across the board. The problem is the encounters are going to vary. You'll have many encounters that are beneficial, that give you something good, and you'll have many encounters that hurt you a bit. Across the whole game, it should balance out fairly decently, but in any given series of moments, it will feel a little bit frustrating to the players who are getting those negative encounters as opposed to the positive ones. As far as what I can see others not liking, the deck building style is a bit different, which I touched upon already. That deck building is going to be a little bit more limiting than traditional deck building experiences. It is not the wide open world of a card row in which you can pick 5, 6, 7 cards or whatever it is, try to figure out the options on the table, nor is it the specific set stacks of a game like Dominion, which you know what's on the table and you can plan your strategy around it. Rather, this game very much is improvisation. It very much is going to be handing you a minimal amount of cards and then having you as the player pick what works for your deck or what doesn't. For me, it actually captures the feel of this game very well. It captures that Wild West feel, thinking on your toes, acting accordingly. But then the card's in your deck. That card is now part of your system, and I can see others not liking the limited choices therein and then the possible extended consequences of having a deck that wasn't built to the degree of customization that they like. So I could see it being the kind of deck building someone else doesn't like. For myself, I appreciate that it brings something new to the genre, or at least new to the games I've experienced, even if it is a bit more limiting in the choices it is providing. As far as my final thoughts on The Few and the Cursed, overall, I really like this game, but I would say I want to like this game more than I like. Let me rephrase that. I like the game a lot, but I want to like it more than I actually like it. But I still like it, which might be a bit of a mouthful and confusing. But I would say is, let's just use arbitrary ratings. We don't really do ratings in these reviews that much. But let's just pretend that I would rate this a 7. I think I want it to be an 8, meaning the art is pulling me in, the world is pulling me in, the experience is pulling me in. I think it needs a bit more for this to be a real keeper in my collection. It's a game that I want it to have more characters to play with. I want it to have more upgrades, more variability in the items you can have, more variabilities in the jobs, more variabilities in the monsters. One of the things I felt that the various monsters and various monsters and wanted that you engage with throughout the game, I felt they were lacking in any sort of abilities or text that really strongly differentiated them from others. So even the final monsters really just come down to different health stats of how much attack you're going to have to deal in a single turn to actually take them out. None of them have any abilities that really mixes things up. You know, when you move into a canyon, this happens, or if you're encountering this here, or any kind of thing like that. I wanted more text on the cards in terms of what it's doing. And don't get me wrong, text has a downside. It comes at the cost of accessibility. And this game is currently incredibly accessible, but even in the main deck of cards, I think I wanted more options as opposed to 95% of the cards really just devolve down into having different distribution of those symbols and no real text or nuance or complexity to the cards. And again, could be a good thing. I think that does make the game a bit more accessible, but at the same time, it now ends up being a fairly accessible deck builder with a longer playtime. And I guess if you're going to give me a 90-minute deck builder, I want it to deliver a little more than just rinse repeat accessibility. Overall, for right now, The Few and Cursed is a game that's staying in my collection. I have enjoyed all my plays of it, and I hopefully will continue to enjoy my plays. The encounters certainly mix things up. The encounters give you different, they're little miniature stories. If you like flavor text, if you like that kind of thing, it will add to your experience, and I do enjoy them. I mean, I'm not a huge flavor text or story person, but I enjoy reading those cards, figuring out what's going to happen next, and then doing whatever it says on it. So there's a lot here that I like. For right now, it's a game I'm holding on to, but I do want to see more from The Few and the Cursed. Few and Cursed. I keep saying The Cursed. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this review. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know in the comments down below. And until next time, have a good one.